Today, we are going to be looking at the free enterprise system, which is a version of a mixed economic system that generally is market-based. So there's more market economic system elements than there are command or centrally planned economic system elements in a free enterprise system. So we'll look at some key fundamental principles of a free enterprise system first. So the first one is voluntary exchange. Voluntary exchange is where you have the transfer of goods, services, or ideas that people are making willingly. So it's very, very important for a free enterprise market system to have willing participants in the economy. So we have a little cartoon here, birthplace of free market economics based in the market system. I wish I had a rock. I wish I had a stick. And so kind of the next panel you would guess would be they trade with each other, right? So it's very basic, mixed, market-based. Free enterprise system would be, a willing exchange. If you are not willingly exchanging things, then it's not a free enterprise system, right? You have to have that choice, right? Whether you're exchanging money or whether you're exchanging, trading different things, whether it's fish and corn or whether it's rocks and sticks, you have to have a transfer of goods and ideas that's happening willingly. It has to be voluntary. Second, major principle of a free enterprise system is the profit motive. Profit motive is an incentive that drives people to improve their standard of living, or remember, standard of living will often define as their material well-being. So having that incentive, having that drive, having that motive to go and make more money and improve and be able to acquire a better material living for yourself, a higher standard of living, is important for and very foundational for a free enterprise system. And I love this little kind of crossword here where it has profit and it talks about growth and efficiency, because those are two of our economic goals and values that are very closely tied to this profit motive. With this profit motive, then you see people innovating and creating new things, which has growth, and they have to be very efficient in order to have a high profit. So those things are very closely associated. Open opportunity. Another fundamental principle is that anybody needs to be able to compete in the market. Anybody can start a business. Anybody can open a business. Anybody can close a business. Anybody's able to compete. It doesn't matter who you are. There's open opportunity. The opportunity is there for anyone. This allows for upward mobility. So you can grow your social economic status, your standard of living, if there's open opportunity and anybody is able to create a business and follow that profit incentive, that profit motive to, if that allows for a much, much better free enterprise system, it's very foundational. Legal equality. You have to have everybody having the same rights under the law, because this is going to help your free enterprise system. It's going to improve your human capital. This is largely to prevent discrimination against women and minorities, and that has existed in previous laws or just in culture. And so legal equality, having just the basics of the same rights under law, is very important. Open opportunity definitely goes into more of the culture aspects that those laws that exist in legal equality are actually happening. But legal equality, you need to have at least under the same laws, everybody being equal. It's very important that you prevent discrimination against women and minority groups, economically speaking, because if we just use women as an example, approximately half the population is women. And so if you, for example, have a law where women, can't work for, pay, they can't work outside the home or something, then you're reducing the skills and the knowledge and experiences of half your labor force, and you're not using everything you can. And experiences of different subcultures and different minorities really brings a lot to the table. A lot of economists and business leaders are finding out that a more diverse leadership actually is leading to better business results. Imagine that. Hopefully it's not too hard to imagine that. And so having legal equality is very important and very foundational to a strong free enterprise system. Private property. This is an important free enterprise system. Basic idea: people have the ability to control what they want to do with their possessions. Okay, so if you buy a t-shirt and tie-dye it, you can do that. And if someone else thinks that tie-dyeing t-shirts ruins them, then they don't have to tie-dye their t-shirts, right? Having the ability to do whatever you want with your possessions, more along the line of, if you own a bunch of land, you can farm on it, you can build a building to have a business on it. Those kinds of things would more be what economists would probably cite. But any of the other, even just random kind of funny examples of tie-dyeing t-shirts applies in private property. You get to control what you want to do with these different resources and possessions that you have. Important idea of this: eminent domain. Kind of a little bit undercuts private property. Eminent domain is where the government has the right to take your property if and only if it is being used for the public and owners are being paid fair market value. So I think in a different assignment, we had a link to a little bit of a video clip where there's a picture from another country where they do not have eminent domain, and what happens then is kind of a very interesting picture. So if you haven't done 3.1, it should be in that assignment. So go back and do that. The eminent domain is important. A large common place where they use eminent domain is to buy just a little bit of somebody's property in order to expand a road slightly, or things like that is a really common use of eminent domain, and that's kind of what it's supposed to be used for. And so that would be kind of goes against private property, but otherwise people get to make decisions for what they want to do with their property all the time. Constitutionally, the Constitution does talk about economics, and it is important to remember that we have protections and provisions for our mixed economic system built into the Constitution. Property rights and eminent domain are both listed in the Constitution. Taxes, the fact that Congress can tax, is in Article 1, Section 9, provides that Congress is able to tax to have money in order to pay for public goods that we've been talking about this week. That's part of the deal. Contracts are legally binding. That's in Article 1, Section 2. Or Section 10, excuse me. That's very important, that when you sign a contract, a business contract or any other kind of contract, that's legally binding and you can be held accountable for it. Because otherwise, if everybody's going back on everybody's word, that leads to a very messy, very confusing economic system, and it just doesn't work well. So Constitution, three main things are explicitly discussed in the Constitution, where we have provisions for a mixed economic system. Private citizens get to make choices about a lot of things, and the government makes some choices and has some involvement. Regulation. This is where we see a lot of our mixed economic system at work. And so there are some pros to regulation. One, the regulations seek to promote public health, safety, and well-being. So I've used this example in some other assignments we've done. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, helps make sure that when we go to the grocery store or to the pharmacy, the things that we're consuming are safe for us and don't kill us, because that is positive. So making sure things are safe, work conditions are safe. That's one of the things that OSHA is involved with, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So those are some pros to regulations. Also, public disclosure laws, the fact that, different companies have to give information, correct information to the public at different times, depending on, what they're doing. That is a positive thing because it makes sure that we have correct information about various things going on. Cons, these are things probably what people talk about more often, is the negative sides of things. One, regulation can be costly. In order to make things, the way that the regulation says, might cost more. So, if in order to protect different germs, you have to have multiple sinks in a restaurant kitchen, then that's going to cost more to have multiple sinks, but people are safer. So there, there are pros and cons to it. So if it's more costly, it's going to cut profits, and so businesses are not going to like that. It also can stifle competition, in part because you're cutting profits. Then that means that it's going to be harder for more businesses to exist and be able to operate. And so that's going to stifle the different competition. And so that eventually will lead to some other issues. Also, it's going to increase government spending. In order to regulate things, you have to enforce the regulation. So then you're going to have to spend money on regulating the different, whether it's the FDA, OSHA, the EPA, environmental protection. That's going to cost government money, and so that's diverting resources that way. Okay, so government thinking about public goods. We have the public sector and the private sector. The public sector is things that the government is providing and paying for. The private sector is things that us as individuals were paying for. Infrastructure is a term you may see often when we talk about public goods. That's things like roads, bridges, trains, communication, like telephone lines, electricity, water, sewer, those kinds of just structural things that help a society function. Okay, so there's also associated with public good, there's a couple of problems with providing things just for everyone. One of them is the free rider problem. So if somebody, and it doesn't necessarily relate to riding, like in a car or something, but free rider is where somebody isn't really paying for something, but they're still getting the benefit of it. So we pay for public goods through taxes. So if you're, not paying your taxes, but you're getting, the benefits of all the things the government provides, then you're a free rider. You're getting basically a free ride of these different things. So roads, if you're paying, your state taxes in Indiana, and then you're in Ohio and you're driving on Ohio state roads, well, you would be a free rider because you're not paying, state taxes to Ohio, but you're benefiting from them, the people that are paying their taxes, and Ohio updating and keeping up their state roads. Sidewalks, same thing. A lot of times, if a business puts a sidewalk in front of their, shop to make it easier for people to get into their business, if you're just, walking around a city, then you get to use the sidewalk even though you didn't pay for it. Or if there's, sidewalk in a park and you go, somewhere, not your hometown, and you're walking around the park, you can't like block off a sidewalk very easily where somebody can't walk around on it. And so there's no way to prevent people from using it. So you can have that free rider problem. So that's one reason why the government pays for it as a public good versus people as private citizens always providing these types of things. The military, even if you don't serve, even if you aren't necessarily, agreeing with it, or you don't, specifically, even if you don't pay taxes, you still benefit from the national defense that is provided for everyone. So even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't serve, you still get the protection of national defense and a more secure nation, even if you are not involved, specifically with the military. So you kind of get a free ride as far as that goes. And then there's this idea of the tragedy of the commons. The commons used to be like a grassy area in the middle of towns, like in the New England area. And so people would go and they would just kind of let their sheep graze. And the problem was very quickly when anybody could just have their sheep graze in this common area, it would just get into dirt and just be really bad. And there would be basically no grass there. And so a common example is if you ever have a teacher that like puts like a mug or a cup of just like pens or pencils in their classroom that anybody can use, and in like a day or two there are no pens or pencils. That's a very classic example of a tragedy of the commons. Problem is, we don't take care of things as well when they're not owned by us. And so the tragedy of the common is when we have something that's more public and shared in common, we have a tendency not to make sure that it's taken care of very well. Even if we know we're supposed to, we have a tendency not to do it as well. So that's the tragedy of the commons, and something that goes against kind of having everything be a public good. Externalities, market failures is when the free enterprise system, the market system simply doesn't work. It completely breaks down. You are having a market system, idea, individuals purchasing things, and that just doesn't work. Even though we need it as a society, nobody is willing to produce it and buy it because there's no profit in it. That's an example of market failure. Remember, it is not a business just closing down and going out of business. That's not a market failure, because if you have a terrible business idea, then we don't want you wasting resources making something that nobody wants to buy. That would be a good thing for the market. Market failure is where we need something, but the market system doesn't produce it. Externalities, remember, that's an unintended consequence. We can have positive externalities and negative externalities, and there are a lot of different ones depending on what product you look at. New schools, new roads, new factories, military, public library. We looked at several of those the other day. Safety net, poverty and free enterprise system. So how do we see government security and the safety net in our economic system? We have a few different things. We have cash transfers, we have in-kind benefits, and we have grants. Those are different ways that we kind of help in securing our different economic equity and having different economic security. So cash transfers, okay? So cash transfer is where we are having money that's coming like in the form of a check to a individual. So it's the money is, in the government's budget, and it's going like in the form of a check or direct deposit into someone else's bank account. So example, this would be TANF, Social Security is a safety net feature, unemployment is a cash transfer payment, and workers' comp. Those are all cash transfer payments where you're getting money specifically that you can then pay for whatever it is that you want to purchase that you need, right? And then in-kind benefits is where you're getting an actual item that you need. You're getting the kind of thing that you need, right? So food stamps, you are specifically getting food, or food giveaways, food bank, you're getting food. Legal aid. So if you ever, even watched a show and says, if you're in trouble, you either, can have your lawyer provided for you. That legal aid is a safety net. Grants are basically where it's an application process that usually happens, and so we're taking public money and we're giving it to a private organization. And so the private organizations, usually nonprofit organizations, will apply for a grant to do a specific thing. And so that, there's lots of grants in education. A lot of research is funded by grants that gets us knowledge about things that ultimately ends up helping us. So our safety net can kind of be summed up for cash transfers. That's when you're getting money that in the form of like a check or direct deposit that you can use on whatever you need, right? In kind benefits, you're getting the kind of actual item that you need. And grants is where we're taking public money and then we're moving it to a private organization.